The Red Sox just took 2 of 3 from the Royals in Kansas City in a tight wild card race. What's going to happen with the rest of this season? More on today's special crossover episode between Locked On Red Sox and Locked On Royals, as we're getting into the nitty gritty here of this season. Lots of games left to be played here in the regular season. Lots of things that could still happen with the standings and tons of playoff implications. So, we're going to be diving into all of it on today's show, as well as some of our biggest takeaways from this series in KC that was highly important for both teams. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. This is a special crossover episode. I am here with Jack Johnson from the Locked On Royals podcast. Jack, how are you doing on this lovely post-series day today?
Well, certainly a lot better than I was doing the last couple of days here in this series, because I'll be honest with you. I was out there last night. I was out there tonight for the game. Somber mood Monday and Tuesday, but I'm sure it was a much better 2 nights for you on the first 2 games of that series. But as for tonight, feeling good, because I think everybody in Kansas City knew how big just grabbing 1 game in this series was, mainly because of how the Red Sox have had the number of the Royals in those 6 games they played in this season series. I think a lot of Royals fans had thought that these 2 teams were very evenly matched, but numbers are numbers, right? The win-loss total is going to tell the whole story. And going in tonight, Boston was 4-1 against Kansas City. So I think a lot of people put a ton of pressure on the Royals tonight to win the game. And fortunately, if you're a Royals fan, they were able to get it done.
Yeah, I definitely was hoping for that sweep. And the realistic side of me was saying it probably wouldn't happen. But the positive, optimistic fan in me wanted to see it happen. But this was a good series overall. Definitely a very competitive series, as I expected it to be. With 2 teams that are just really hanging on by a thread right now in that wild card race and really just fighting for that last spot. And both teams certainly are very much not out of their respective division races either. So both teams are kind of in a similar spot right now when it comes to their standings. I mean, the Red Sox are 6 games out in the AL East right now, with plenty of games still left to be played against the 2 teams ahead of them in the Orioles and the Yankees. The Royals right now are only 4 games out of the AL Central race, so I'm not really ruling out that possibility of them winning their division either.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, because about a month or 2 ago, the Royals were 8.5, 9 games back of Cleveland. And the way the Guardians had played, for the first 3 months of the year, everybody in the Central, even Minnesota fans, or at least a couple of them that I know, my college roommate's actually a Twins fan. He's going, it's the Guardians division at this point. I mean, they were so far ahead of everybody else. And, Cleveland's not a team that traditionally is always at the top of the division. They've had really good teams before, even playoff teams that didn't run away with the division, but really, really good record-wise teams. And this year was just different, right? Cleveland got off to such a good start. They had a long winning streak. Their bullpen was phenomenal. And the Royals fans and Twins fans, I think, kind of came together and went, it's a battle for second place at this point. It's a battle for the wild card division. But I think what always stuck in the back of my mind was that Cleveland's rotation just never worked deep into games. And they had a fantastic bullpen. They still have a fantastic bullpen. But that rotation never worked deep enough into games where that the bullpen could get a little bit of a rest. So the bullpen now is starting to get taxed, and the rotation is being put more front and center than they really had to back in April, May, and June. And that's allowed this gap to be closed a little bit. And Cleveland, I still think, should be considered the favorite in this division, because every time it gets kind of close, that 3 to 4 game deficit, Cleveland starts playing well, right? Cleveland gets on, they beat Philly in a series, right? Or they beat Minnesota in a series. And, they still have, a great team. They've got stars on that team. They're incredibly young. They've got that bullpen. And even though the rotation doesn't work deep into games, they have guys that can step up when it matters most. So even though it's gotten close, the Royals only within 4 games. I know for a lot of Royals fans, the focus is still just get your foot in the door, get back to October, get to the playoffs. If you do it through the division, that's fantastic. But the goal right now is just get into the playoffs, no matter how it happens. Wild card division. If it is the division, it's going to take care of yourself because that means you're winning a lot of games and Cleveland's losing a lot of games. But for me, my focus has been on the wild card race for about the last 2 months because every time they get close, 4 or 5 games, Cleveland always finds a way to extend it to 7 or 8 or 9.
Yeah, and it's so true though when you say just get into the playoffs because you never know what's going to happen once you get in. And I bring them up a lot because they are a prime example of this. Is last year's Diamondbacks team.
Absolutely.
Nobody expected them to go to the World Series last year, and it's really just a matter of getting in. And you really don't know what's going to happen when you get in. And I've been saying that a lot on my show too about this Red Sox team is just find a way to get into the playoffs. And one of the biggest things in this series in particular that I really liked that the Red Sox did well is the pressure that they put on strong Royal starting pitching to up their pitch counts and get them out of the game early. And the Red Sox offense will do that. They grind through their at bats and they score lots of runs. So this is an offense that will be able to win them lots of games down the stretch. And that was a big thing I noticed in this series was this Royals rotation is no joke, but the fact that the Red Sox were able to go out there, put pressure on these guys from the start, and really work those pitch counts to the point where they were giving up those runs and then they had to be pulled earlier in the game is what, to me, really allowed the Red Sox to have that door open to win the first 2 games of that series.
Yeah, I think what Boston's done in both of these series, the first one coming in Fenway Park and then at Kauffman Stadium, of course, is against Brady Singer and Seth Lugo specifically. I thought Alex Cora did a phenomenal job of loading up that lineup with lefties, and I think they are the only team this year to take advantage of that. I mean, Brady Singer has been in Kansas City since 2020. He was drafted in 18, made his debut in the COVID year, and he has always just sort of had that advantage because of his pitch mix of working against righties. He loves to use his two-seam sinker, and that slider is his put-away pitch. And yeah, it's nice and fine if you can locate that slider on the back foot of a lefty, but the Red Sox have so many good left-handed hitters that eventually they're going to tag you. And Brady Singer was fortunate enough, in my opinion, of leaving that game with only 2 runs to his name at the time. And then Angel Serpa gives up the 2-run double to Jarren Duran. It just felt like a matter of time because so many left-handed hitters in that Red Sox lineup are tough to put away, are tough to strike out. And Seth Lugo, the same thing, as good as he's been for Kansas City this year, when you face that many lefties in a lineup, it's going to come back to haunt you. It's going to come back to bite you because, a double to lead off the inning is going to turn into 2 or 3 runs. That happened in Seth Lugo's final inning last night. And I looked at this game tonight with Cole Reagans on the bump, and as good as Cole has been, I looked at it simply as he's a lefty. They can't load up the lineup with lefties out there, which is what they were able to do with Singer and Lugo. And that, I think, worked to his advantage a little bit. But even in this game, it was a Gonzalez that parked a 3-run home run, take the lead. And it's going, man, I mean, you can't wait for Boston to leave town if you're a Royals fan because it doesn't matter who they got out there. They're going to be able to put a lot of strain on your rotation.
Yeah, and that's definitely something all season long that has been a struggle for the Red Sox is when they're facing a left-handed pitcher because they don't have a lot of right-handed power in their lineup. So when it comes to situations where they're going up against a lefty, they don't have a crazy amount of balance in the lineup in those situations in order to be able to succeed. And that's why they went at the trade deadline and traded for another right-handed bat in Danny Jansen so they could bring in somebody to kind of help balance out the lineup, who also hit a home run in the game too. His first home run in a Red Sox uniform, which is definitely exciting for us fans, hoping that he pans out as, one of their big trade deadline moves here. But that's something with having a very lefty heavy lineup with this Red Sox team is when it comes to facing a really talented lefty, they can't get anything going offensively. So I was definitely intrigued by the way that they were able to show up and perform with the bats in this series finale.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lineup that was relentless, and it felt that way in all three games of the series. Even though Kansas City found a way to salvage the finale, it was a grind up until the Royals had their 5-run inning tonight. I mean, it really felt like the pressure was on the Royals to show up in a big way in this finale because the Red Sox had done their job, right? They had won this series, they had won the season series, and so at anything else at this point, anything extra was just gravy, right? They go in there and they sweep Kansas City, great. But even if you lose, you won the season series. You gained a game in the wild card race. And I just go back constantly to the big time moments, the clutch at bats that were able to exploit the Royals in numerous occasions. I mean, I was there for game 2, and Masataka Yoshida just having a ground ball with eyes to make a 4-3 game, a 6-3 game, and you just have those balls bounce your way and come through in big time moments. It shows you how relentless that lineup can be. And I know for the Royals, they've had their moments of being a relentless force with their lineup, or an aggressive 1 through 9 approach. But even at times when they face those teams like the Red Sox, they kind of just put their arms up in the air and go, what more can you do? That was a pitch I thought I located well, but they had a good at bat. They put the ball in play, and they did some damage with it. So this was a fantastic series, I think, in terms of a competitiveness, because it was so fun on Tuesday night. That game felt like a playoff game with the way it was managed, with how exciting it was. And even tonight, just a lot of firepower in the lineup. And it would not shock me at all if come September, come late September, we're talking about both of these teams in the final week of the season just fighting for that wild card spot.
Yeah, and it's huge for the Red Sox that they were able to clinch the season series, because that does mean that if these teams finish the season in a tie with the same record, the Red Sox get the tiebreaker there too when it comes to that wild card spot. And what an ending of the regular season that would be if they finish with the same record and it ends up ending in this crazy tiebreaker. But even the little things that the Red Sox do, like that Dom Smith crazy slide when I thought for sure he was going to be out, and I did not think that call was going to be overturned, and props to Alex Cora for seeing something and challenging that. But just how happy everybody was in the clubhouse when that call was made, that he was safe, was just really special. And that's something that this Red Sox clubhouse has going for them. Is Alex Cora is just very much a player's coach, and he very much has a way of making a good environment for everybody and creating those vibes that you want in a clubhouse. And that's something that I think has allowed this Red Sox team to continue that constant never give up attitude. And we're going to be in every game and we're going to fight till the last out. And that's something that I really have enjoyed seeing with them. But there's a lot of games still left to be played. And coming up, we're going to be discussing what are the keys for both of these two teams as we progress through the rest of this regular season here and we approach playoff time. But first, I need to tell you about this awesome ticketing service called Game Time. Believe me when I say this app is very useful for tickets for anything. I mean, I love college basketball. As a lot of you know on here, I am a diehard UConn basketball fan and just enjoyed watching my team win its second straight national championship. But because they had won the national championship the year before, tickets were super expensive to go to their games this past winter. And I would compare ticket prices on all these vendors, and Game Time always had the lowest prices. So I bought tickets through them for multiple games this season, for baseball games, especially too now, because you can see the view from your seat. And at a place like Fenway, sometimes you could get blocked by a pole and not have the best view. So it will help you prevent that too. So you can go to Game Time for all of your ticketing needs. All you have to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, just create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And trust me, if you do sometimes get last minute when it comes to your tickets, it can help you out with that a lot as well. So be sure to check out Game Time today, especially if you're looking to go to some playoff baseball games, if you are a Royals fan or a Red Sox fan, because there is a chance that you, as you are listening to this show, could have a team in the postseason this year. So definitely keep that in mind. I am here with Jack Johnson, the host of Locked On Royals, after what was a very intense playoff-like series, as you mentioned, with the atmosphere. I'm sure you can attest to just being there, what the environment was like at these games, and just a lot of showcasing of different strengths and weaknesses that these two teams have as they approach these last couple months of the season and head into the playoffs. So what would you say is the biggest key for the Royals to be able to win games down the stretch and find themselves in a playoff spot?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that the fan base has come to a unanimous decision that the bullpen is going to have to be ironed out. It's going to have to reach this level of sustainability where you're not having to dread and sweat out every single 3-run game, 2-run game, 1-run game. I mean, they blew a game on Saturday against the Tigers, who have an incredibly banged up lineup. And they had acquired a couple of guys for the bullpen, Hunter Harvey being one coming over from Washington, and he blew a save opportunity on Saturday. And that kind of, brought that confidence level way, way down with the bullpen again. And then, tonight, Lucas Ursig comes in and has a great inning in 2/3, and he's seen by far and away as the best bullpen arm for the Royals. The issue is, though, they are using him as the quote unquote fireman. And I don't really want to say that's an issue, but I know a lot of people out there want him to be the closer, that you are building your bullpen around Lucas Ursig so that when the 9th inning rolls around, he's getting you those final 3 outs and you feel good about that. The issue is they don't have those guys for the 6th inning, the 7th inning, and the 8th inning that are as locked down as Lucas Ursig. And with the stretch of games they have upcoming, they're going to see Minnesota a lot. They're going to see Cleveland a lot. They're going to see the Yankees. They're going to see the Phillies. They're going to see the Pirates. They're going to see a lot of teams, even the Cardinals this weekend. They're going to see teams that are playoff teams, or at least fighting for a playoff spot. And they're not overly concerned about the offense. They've got Bobby Witt Jr. Vinny Pasquantino has been on a tear. Salvador Perez has had, a year of turning back the clock. They've had moments of Hunter Renfroe and MJ Melendez and Michael Massey. So that offense is not the main concern. There are issues in the lineup, as everybody has, but the bullpen is just that one aspect of, man, you can have a great start through 6 innings on the road and you can be leading 3-1. But there's that stress aspect of who are you going to in the 7th, who are you going to in the 8th, and who are you going to in the 9th. If you use Lucas Ursig in the 7th inning, well, who's the 8th? Who's closing out this game if you get there? And so for me, I do think in these final 45, 46 games, that's going to be what defines them. If they get into the playoffs, it means this bullpen reached a level of sustainability, reached a level of comfort, and they evened everything out. If they don't, I think it's a direct correlation to this bullpen not being able to do its job.
Yeah, it's definitely a similar theme with the Red Sox right now, too. Obviously, we both know what this offense can do and what they're capable of. We've discussed a lot of that, and that is an aspect that is going to win them lots of games because they're going to be able to score a lot of runs, no doubt about it. They also have a lot of speed on the roster that is something that not a lot of other teams have. Between Jarren Duran, David Hamilton, Sadam Rafaela, 3 players who are all super fast that are going to throw off opposing pitchers on the base paths with their ability to steal bases so easily, turn singles into doubles, and just travel at a really fast rate around the base paths is something that Alex Cora has been very good about managing this year, is that speed. And that's something they can use to their advantage down the stretch here. But the pitching in general has to be better, especially the starting pitching. I mean, Cutter Crawford, he had a very good first half of the season, but over this last few weeks here, something has been disconnecting for him. He's given up lots of home runs over his last few starts, and he just has very much not been the same pitcher that he was early on. Command is just not there as much, just too many walks and too many home runs. And the walks came back to bite him tonight. We saw that happen, just too many free passes that he had given out. And of course, Bobby Witt Jr. comes up to the plate, and I had a very bad feeling that was going to come back to haunt Crawford with a couple runners on base, because you don't bring Bobby Witt into that kind of situation with Crawford pitching and actually pitch to him. I mean, if you want to keep Crawford in the game to try to give him a chance to get out of that inning, then sure, but then you should walk him. That was the thing to me that I was like, you don't pitch to him in that situation. And then what do you know? Hits a double and drives in 2 runs. And then the game starts to feel like it's getting out of reach for the Red Sox pretty early. So that's something that needs to be better, is the starting pitching. And the bullpen, coming out of the All-Star break, the bullpen was exceptionally bad for the Red Sox, but over the last few series, they have seemed to turn things around there, and they are getting a couple guys back. I mean, Chris Martin came back tonight to the Red Sox bullpen, which was nice to see him back. He is a high leverage guy. He's usually the go-to 8th inning guy. So having him back from injury is definitely going to help in the bullpen. But the pitching in general is going to be a big issue, because they were giving up 6, 7 to 8 runs a game coming out of the All-Star break, and the offense was scoring that many runs. And usually if you score 6 or 7 runs, you can relatively feel confident that you're going to get the win. But then the pitching staff was not allowing that to happen. So that is going to be the biggest thing. I said it going into the season. The biggest issue for them is going to be their pitching. And I'm sitting here still saying it now. The starting pitching needs to be better across the board consistently. The bullpen definitely could be a little bit sharper, but that's what I'm looking at with this Red Sox team down the stretch here. And if I'm putting these two teams head to head, the Royals very clearly have a starting pitching advantage, and the Red Sox have an offensive advantage. And it seems like both bullpens kind of have some things that, they have to work through right now.
Well, and I thought it was very interesting in this series, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this, Gabby, but it felt like in the first 2 games of this series, Alex Cora managed this like a playoff series. I was absolutely in love with it. It was getting Kenley Jansen up, even in game 1 when it was a 4-run game, of if things start to spiral, we're going to our heavy hitter in the bullpen. We're going to our guy, our closer. And then on Tuesday night, you had that situation of it's a 1-run game. There's 2 outs, but a runner in scoring position. I'm going to my heavy hitter. I'm going to Kenley for a 4-out save. And even though, I feel like nowadays in baseball with the speeding up of play, we don't like managers having a guy throw, 2 outs in an inning if they've already thrown an extra out, in the previous inning, because now it's a 3-batter minimum. But, kind of having that Terry Francona approach of, I'm going to use a guy for just a few outs, then I'm going to the next guy. I'm going to piece this together like it's some puzzle, right? I'm not going to have my guy work through 2 innings, or I'm not going to try to overwork him. And that's what I loved about Alex Cora's approach in game 1 and game 2. But I'm curious your thoughts in game 3, why Cutter Crawford was given a little bit longer of a leash when it kind of felt like in that inning, it was slipping away from him to face Bobby Witt Jr. Was it more so of, hey, it's a righty-righty matchup. I know it's Bobby Witt Jr., but we're not going to the bullpen to bring in another righty because the bullpen has struggled. What did you think about that inning specifically of Cora going with a little bit longer of a leash?
Yeah, Cora is a fantastic manager, and I really like a lot of the in-game decisions that he does make. But I was definitely surprised with that move. I thought that, things were starting to go south for him, and it almost had that feeling of this could get very bad very fast if he stays in this game. But the thing with Alex Cora and his starting pitchers is he kind of overtrusts them sometimes, and he likes them to feel like they have that confidence from their manager. And I think he was really trying to push it because he really wanted him to get through the inning. And it almost felt like he wanted to take the chance there because he just really wanted him to finish that inning and felt like he had the chance to finish the inning. And I think the matchup was definitely a factor. I mean, as soon as he pulled him, I mean, a home run was given up on the very next at bat after that. So I was surprised that he kept him in, but more surprised that he actually let him pitch to Bobby. I thought that he was going to just put him on because they had a base open. And I thought that if he was going to do that, he was just going to take his chances after that if he was going to keep him in. So the bigger thing to me was, why didn't he just give him the free pass? But I think Alex Cora preferred that matchup over bringing in somebody out of the bullpen fresh to face him in that moment. And I think in Alex Cora's head, he said, like, I have to trust him. Like, I have to trust these guys when it comes to big games down the stretch. And with Cutter Crawford, I mean, they've pushed him a lot this year. He's pitched a lot more innings this year than he has in the past. Usually in the past, he would average 4 to 5 innings a start. Now he's able to pitch deeper into games. And so I think Cora's thought process was, we've been stretching him out a lot this year, so why shouldn't we do it again now? But there definitely was a bit of a surprise factor to me, because that moment, knowing who was coming up and how he looked already in that inning, it felt to me like the right time to pull him. And then sure enough, it almost felt like that situation where they just kept him out there for one batter too long. And Cora has done that before. And that is kind of a bad feeling of, if he had just pulled him one batter prior, this game could have been different. And I felt like that kind of set the tone for the momentum for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I feel like the Red Sox and the Royals deal with that same, debate on the inside of, the rotation can be fine and the bullpen's struggling. So do you want to turn it over to the bullpen, who hasn't been very good, or do you roll the dice with your starter? The Royals got burned by that twice in game 1 and game 2. They rolled the dice with Singer and he stayed in too long, and the Red Sox took advantage. They rolled the dice with Lugo, and it kind of came back to bite them. Even tonight, they tried to roll the dice with Cole Reagans again, and the Red Sox put 2 guys on in the 7th inning, and they had to go to Lucas Ursig in that spot. But, I think Royals and Red Sox fans can absolutely share that same sentiment of, you'd like your starter to get out of it. And yes, hindsight's always going to be 2020 if it works out against you. But the bullpens haven't been good. So when the bullpens haven't been good, it's like, okay, yeah, you go to that guy, but what if they implode? What if they don't pitch well? Then should you have left the starter in? It's always one of those things that's much easier to dissect once the game's actually over.
And that's why the managers are doing their job and we are not doing their job, because I can't imagine having that job. I mean, it's a dice roll. It's a gamble
Yeah.
every time. And, similar to you, the Red Sox bullpen has struggled, and a lot of it has to do with injury. They, had a couple guys who weren't available prior to them trading for a couple relievers at the All-Star break. So there were a few guys that kept being used over and over and over again, and it caused them to get really tired, and it showed in their performance. And those same guys, if those are the options, Cora doesn't necessarily want to go to those guys every time because they aren't as sharp as they were at the beginning of the season. So I don't think there was really a right choice in that situation. I think it just was, I mean, Crawford kind of got himself into that with all the walks in the game. But it was a dice roll either way. And if, he brings in a reliever and they give up a home run, then it's like, oh, he should have stayed with him. You know what I mean? So it's just
Absolutely.
a tough situation to be in. But I do think it was a matter of, I need to trust him here because I think he's the best option to pitch right now in this moment to this specific batter.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right, managers and bench coaches, pitching coaches, they know more than we do, right? They look into these matchups and they know who has the advantageous, point of the game. They know who's got the splits. They've got everything in front of them. So they're not just always going with a gut feeling in it. They've got more data at times than we do. But when it doesn't work out right, us on the couch or us at the game, we're able to go, why didn't you make that move? Or why did you make that move? And so that's baseball to a T. That is absolutely baseball to a T of when it doesn't work out, oh, we can always blame the manager for the move they made.
Exactly. Yeah, the managers take the fall all the time and it's tough. Everything goes back to why didn't the manager do this or why didn't he do this? But they're the ones around the players on a day-to-day basis and they analyze the matchups. So sometimes you just kind of have to trust the decisions they're making.
Yeah, no, it is a no-win position, it feels like, right? That managers, you are more often than not just putting faith in guys that you think you can trust. And even if they are the best in the game, there is never a guarantee they can get it done. I'm sure we're going to get a little bit more into that here for our final segment as we're going to talk about some of the biggest threats right in the American League. We're going to talk about who's going to prevent the Royals and Red Sox from actually getting a playoff spot. But we do want to give a shout out to one last sponsor here in SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, h-vac, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Well, Gabby, I know that both these teams right now are going to be in a dead sprint in the final 45 games or so. And both these teams are dealing with a gauntlet of a division, right? The American League Central has the Guardians and the Twins that are in a playoff spot. And we know that the American League East is obviously no slouch either when you have the Yankees and the Orioles. The Red Sox out of a playoff spot right now, but we know this is not the final story between the Royals and the Red Sox trying to get into the postseason. We know this is going to come down to the final couple of weeks. So I'm curious on your side, looking at these playoff teams, because I know in Kansas City, the teams that Royals fans have their eyes on, but as Red Sox fans, and from your perspective, who are some of the teams that you are keeping kind of tabs on as maybe being the American League favorite, or just some teams that might sneak up on you in the final month and a half?
Yeah, I mean, definitely have to mention the Orioles here. I mean, being in their division and having to play them as often as we do, that's just a very complete baseball team right now. Pitching was their biggest weakness last year, and I even said that was something that was going to hold them back in the playoffs last year, was that they didn't really have a complete starting pitching rotation, and then going out and getting Corbin Burns in the offseason to add to that staff was just a huge move for them. And I said, oh no, everybody needs to look out now for this Orioles team, because this is a team who just really for years and years was just at the bottom and constantly trying to focus on rebuilding and get a plethora of prospects in their system that they now have to make those kinds of trades for those types of players. And they are a team to me that the Red Sox are going to struggle with. And if they were to meet them in the playoffs, that is the type of team that the Red Sox have to play their best baseball against. I mean, the Red Sox have made a good amount of defensive blunders this year. I mean, we've seen it recently. We saw it in this series. They make little mistakes defensively, and the Orioles are absolutely a team that will take advantage of those mistakes. So I'm looking at them as a team that could give the Red Sox a challenge down the stretch here going into this postseason. I mean, I think the Twins are an interesting team. I think they are a team that the Red Sox could jump past. I think that the capability is there. I think overall, I like the Red Sox ability level compared to the Twins. I think they are relatively evenly matched, and they're a team that I think the Red Sox can beat, that are beatable. But another interesting one to me is Seattle. I mean, the Red Sox just won a series against them, won the season series against them, but they're a team that I could see really turning it on in the postseason if they press the right buttons. I mean, trading for Randy Arozarena was huge for them. I think he's going to be a big difference maker in that offense. Red Sox played them recently right after they traded for him, and he was just getting some big hits in that series. So that's another team to me that I think people aren't really talking as much about being a serious contender. But from what I've seen from them, I think they are a bit of a sleeper team to make a serious run this year. I mean, they may not win their division because the Astros have seemingly started to figure things out. But either way, I really like Seattle as a team that could be a team that gives the Red Sox trouble if they have everything click for them at the right time.
Yeah, I think Seattle is a team that if you get them at Safeco, if you have to play them in Seattle, you're going to have to deal with an elite pitching staff because the numbers with them at home compared to their numbers on the road, it's drastic, right? They are
Yes.
a much better team at home. And when you have to run into, George Kirby, right, who can just, throw strikes all day long, but not just throw strikes, right? Effective strikes that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And Logan Gilbert as well. You're running into not just number ones in Seattle or number twos elsewhere. You're running into like 3 or 4 number ones that could go be aces elsewhere. So Seattle to me absolutely can be scary, but I'm going to stay in that division, unfortunately, until they are eventually
You're going to
killed
say
off.
Houston, aren't you?
I am. Until they are eventually buried and done. I can't rule them out. Even last
It's
year,
fair.
it was hilarious. The Royals went into Houston and swept the Astros in September. The 106 loss Royals last year swept them in Houston. And yet there they are, a game away from the World Series. I just can't bet on anybody else. And right now, like there's no guarantee they get in, but we all know deep down, because I know that everybody in baseball, unless you're a Houston fan, they're not rooting for the Astros to
No.
get back there and have an opportunity. But we all know deep down they're going to have an opportunity. And that's what's scary about them. That regular season, they can win 87, 88 games, 90 games, but they're going to be the team you just don't want to draw. And I think the main reason why is they've won their World Series, right? I would love to think, like with the Royals and the Red Sox, they wouldn't have the pressure some of these other teams have if they get their foot in the door. Like the Yankees are going to have immense pressure. Baltimore is going to have immense pressure. Seattle, because of their postseason curse, is going to have that pressure because Houston in their own division just constantly does better than them. And with Houston, they get their foot in the door, they win the West, and they get to host the Royals or the Red Sox. Like, they're a team that has no pressure either because they've already won their World Series and they crawled back from the depths this year. So, absolutely, Houston is on my radar of don't let them get too hot because you let them get hot at the wrong time for everybody else, and they're going to have that postseason run. We all know it's going to be true as
And they
well.
have the experience too.
They
That's the thing
do.
too. Like those players, they've been there before. They've done this. And you look at teams like ours, like lots of young players. Like, I mean, this Red Sox team, so much of this roster is inexperienced. I mean, the only one on this roster from the 2018 World Series team is Devers. That's still here from that team. Like these guys are not experienced in the postseason. Like it's a lot of young players here. So you're going to, from an experience standpoint, put them up against the Astros and it's not even close.
No, I mean, I remember back in 2015, the Royals bested the Astros, and that was the last time it felt like the Astros got bested by anybody or choked in the playoffs. Like last year, they technically choked against Texas, but Texas felt like the team of destiny. And still, it's like the Astros, every time you think they're dead, they're not.
No, it's so
You
true.
can't bury them. And it doesn't matter who leaves their team, it doesn't matter who manages that team. They seem to find their way back in the playoffs. So, though right now, I don't believe they are close to the best team in the American League, it is not going to shock me one bit if they get their foot in the door and they find themselves a game away from the World Series in the American League Championship Series.
Yeah, I mean, that would be super fascinating. And it would be really interesting if they're playing a team like the Orioles in the
Yeah.
ALCS, because the Orioles, to me, are a team that legitimately is a better team to me right now. When you look at them compared to the Astros. But again, that whole experience thing is just like still screaming in my head, like the Houston Astros have it. They know what that pressure is like. And that'd be a fun series to me, because you're going to have a more experienced team versus a much better team to me that feels more complete now. But I mean, that Orioles team, now they have exposure to the playoffs. A lot of those young guys have gotten their foot in the door into the postseason party last year. So I think that's going to pay dividends for them in the postseason now, this run.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows how talented Baltimore is. And I do think this year's a little bit different, where last year they were the incredible story. They were this team that, I mean, went from 110, 115 losses a couple years before to winning 100 plus games and being the number one seed in the American League. It was an awesome story. And even though they got swept by Texas, you couldn't fault them for the year they had. Like, you kind of just brushed it off of, hey, they got there. They were incredible this year. They fell short, but man, they're ahead of schedule. This year's different. If the Orioles don't get past that wild card round or that divisional round, there's going to be that heat of, oh, you guys just can't do it. You guys can't win the big game. You can win 90 plus, 100 plus in the regular season, but we all know it matters when those lights get super bright in October. And these other teams in the American League, like the fact that Texas surpassed them and won a World Series last year when they had 100 plus losses 2 years ago, like that has to sting with them of, we were supposed to be that team. We were supposed to be the model of, we lost a lot of games. We rebuilt. We won 100 plus games. We won a World Series. But we know baseball's not like that. We know baseball's random. You have to get lucky at the right time. And the World Series last year was an absolute dart throw. Nobody thought those two teams would be there when it's all said and done. But that's also the beauty. And that's why I love about this postseason this year. Whenever the teams are going to be announced, whenever we figure it out, it's a dart throw. You can have your favorites, Baltimore, the Dodgers, the Phillies, or the Yankees. It's really a dart throw, because sometimes those great teams, you can play well, you know, when it's June and July and August. And yeah, those lights are bright, but they're not do or die bright. And that's what I think with the Royals and the Red Sox. And my lasting point here is, what would they look like if they get in there? Because these teams haven't experienced, or at least a lot of players have not experienced that type of pressure. And I, for one, hope that if the Royals don't get in, I hope the Red Sox get that chance, because I think these two teams are identical almost. I think they have a lot of the same characteristics, and I would love to see what one of these teams could do in a playoff series.
Yeah, it would definitely be super fun, and it really just proves the point that you never know. Baseball is a crazy sport, and once the postseason hits, it's a totally different game. Any team could catch fire at the right time, and if it's one of our two teams, that could be a lot of fun, because it would be a huge surprise to baseball fans if one of these two teams makes a serious run. So that's how it is. That's baseball. And, you know, this has been a lot of fun. Everybody, we appreciate you tuning into Locked On Red Sox and Locked On Royals. You can find these two shows on any podcast platform. Every day we are locked on your team every day. And if you want to hear more about other teams across the league as we look ahead to the playoffs here, you can check out the Locked On MLB podcast with host Paul Sullivan. He is very fun, very loud, very passionate about baseball. And those of you who are Locked On Red Sox listeners have heard me do a few shows with him. And he definitely knows his stuff about baseball and all the teams across the league. So if you're looking to just hear about a more general analysis of what's going on across baseball here to prep yourself for the postseason, check that out wherever you get your podcast as well. Thanks as always for tuning in. My last thing, as I always say, is go Red Sox, which Jack won't like, but that's how we do things here. I will catch you all next time.